Welcome, Ronnie.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Jen.
I just smoked myself out. I cooked a piece of salmon really high. I'm going to move over to this side. How's the family? How's everybody?
Good. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Kids are doing well. Yeah, thank God. Thank God. Can't take anything for granted. We've been thinking a lot about everyone and all the relatives and non-relatives, but everyone's in Ukraine. It's a lot. It's a lot to digest.
Do you have family there, or are you just talking in general? You do?
Yeah, so some cousins.
Wow. What are you hearing from them?
So I haven't heard from them directly because I've seen them just posting on the chat. I haven't messaged them because they're the girl cousins in the family. So they have, my sisters are messaging them and that. But they're just actually today, they made their train, which would take them to Odessa and then to Moldova and then to Romania and then to Israel, God willing. So they weren't sure if the train was leaving or if it was not leaving, but thank God.
So they have to flee. How old are they?
It's actually with a whole yeshiva. She's there with her husband, who's one of the administrators of the yeshiva, and with all the Bachrim that they're all leaving from where? From Dnieper Petrovsk. Wow. Just going to close the door here.
Yeah. It's so sad because a lot of people seem to really love living in that country, and a lot of people are there for educational reasons, and you have to give it all up. Some people don't want to go back.
Insane, yeah.
Right. I totally just don't get the Russians. I try to comprehend, but I can't.
Welcome, Felicia. Good to see you.
How are you? Hi, Ronnie. How are you?
Hi, Baruch Hashem. I got something at charity.com. I wanted to donate something to the Ukraine, but I think I decided I wanted to do it through someone I know. I think Rabbi Yafi might be collecting, someone told me.
There are numerous funds, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome, Alison. Good to see you.
Hello.
Hey, Alison.
Hi, Ronnie.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. You too. Hi.
Hi, Rabbi.
How's it, Tzvi? Welcome.
Hi. Sorry, my camera's off. It's because my iPad has low battery, so I'll be holding it. I'm letting it charge, so to speak. So I'll be holding it.
All right.
But yeah, I'm tuned in and ready to go. I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Thank God. I mean, there is a lot of stuff going on in the world.
I know.
It's difficult.
It's been interesting to say the least, but yeah, thank God we're okay.
We're involved with good things. So being involved with good things is a no-fail attitude. Because,
I do.
You instead of just stressing, we're getting together, and that itself has a good energy, creates a good energy for us here.
Exactly. Yeah, it creates a good atmosphere. Conducive
Maybe
one.
we should dedicate this class to our brothers and sisters who are struggling in the Ukraine tonight.
Yes, it's
good idea.
You know what's going on here. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
Josh is coming on. And Shmuel. We'll give one more minute for everybody to come on. And what I'd like to do is also do a quick Psalm of Tehillim together. Chapter 20 Psalms. so we can do the psalm together, and that way give opportunity for some others to get on. Hi, Josh. Good to see you.
Hello.
Welcome. Well,
Glad to be here.
Hey,
Hey,
Yogurt.
Susan. She's here just for you, Susan.
Thank you. She knows who her fans are.
She also knows Ronnie.
Yeah, Yogurt's a shul goer. I don't know if you know that about her.
Susan knows Rabbi Hyman lets her come to Westville on certain occasions.
She looks cute.
so I'm gonna share the screen here. We'll say the psalm together. It's Psalm 20 from the Tehillim, from the Psalms, and it's traditionally said at times of difficulty. And the understanding is that not only when we pray are we praying and hoping to have the answer to our prayers, but just the fact that we're investing prayer and energy is strengthening our brothers and sisters and everyone that we're including in our prayers. Anyone that's in danger, we're strengthening them, because ultimately we're all connected. And by focusing ourselves in a positive vein on positive things, we're enabling them as well to be strengthened from the inside. You know, there's a whole different channel of communication that goes on under the surface, and by doing good things, we strengthen everybody involved. So welcome, Shannon. Good to see you. And I'll share the Psalms together here. There is in both English and Hebrew. I'll read it in the Hebrew, and you could follow along in either the English or the Hebrew, whichever your strength is. And God understands both. Thank God he's bilingual, maybe more than just bilingual. Understands all languages. Shem Elohei Yaakov, Yishlach Ezracha Mikodesh, Umitzion Yisadeka. Verse 4, Yiskar Kol Min Chaysecha, Vailas Chayidash Nesela, Yitin Lachach Vavecha, V'chol Atzas Chayimale, Nirananav Vishuasecha, V'Shem Eloheinu Nidgal, Yimale Adinoi Kol Mitale Secha. Verse 7, Ata Yodaiti, Ki Yeshia Adinoi Meshicha, Yanehu Mishmei Kadeshoi, Vigvorei Seisha Yaminoi. אלה ברכב ואלה בסוסים, ואנחנו בשם אדוני אלוהינו נזכיר. הם עקרו ונפלו, ואנחנו קמנו ונסיידד, אדוני הושיע, המלך יעננו וימכרנו. And it finishes in the verse 10, O Lord, save us, and may the King answer us on the day that we call. General plea that Hashem accept all the prayers, and not only accept them, but answer them, because we're this is it's a timely matter. It needs to be responded to ASAP. I guess it's in there somewhere in the code of the Psalm. It says ASAP, you know. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming on. It's a pleasure to be studying with everybody this evening, and it's great to see Steve here as well, sharing a screen. That's a big one. And this is lesson number 5. And what's very, very cool about this lesson is that there's 2 things. First of all, it brings together so much of what we've studied in the previous lessons, and it translates that, and it allows us to translate that into practical application within our daily routine. So we first of all are able to understand it because we've studied so much about it already, and translate it into practice, into how we relate to the things in our routine every day, and how we could practice it literally in transforming our activities, this is life-changing, this lesson. And I think they've saved the best for last. So we're hitting 5, and it's just getting better and better. So excited to be here with you. And I'm going to ask, check in that everybody has with them their student book. If you don't, I will be trying to share the screen here as well. and we're on student book. The page is 148. Thank you. 148. Mind your business. We talked a little bit about how God is everywhere and God is engaged with everything, and he's intimately involved with our lives and our world. So you had a group of little kids in school lining up in the lunchroom, and the teacher had them lined up very neat, very, very calmly at the head of the table, and at the other end of the table she had a beautiful pile of apples. You know those Costco apples? Very shiny. They have like a tray of 16 or 12 apples. Each apple has a little basin for it to sit in because they're like so special. These huge, beautifully shined apples. I don't know what they put on them, but they look great. And she has them all piled up, but she only has one for each child. And she's put a little notice before she goes to the next group of children. You're only allowed to take one. And on the notice, it says, one only, God is watching. So she goes off to the next group of children, and a little bit further off in the dining room, there's a cookie jar. And sure enough, one of the kids goes over to the cookie jar and scribbles a little note and stickies it onto the cookie jar. And later on, she goes to take a look, and he wrote on the note, you can take as many cookies as you like because God is watching the apples. So the idea that God is intimately involved in everything of our lives, every element. Initially, we may have thought, when you go to synagogue, when you're involved with something spiritual, there you are connecting, there you are kind of where God's paying attention. Or you're involved with something godly, divine, in that spiritual activity. But what about the mundane? What about the regular, everyday activities? It's easy to think that those are kind of not only not divine, not only are they not godly, but they take away from spirituality. And what we want to study tonight is that ultimately we want to bring the divine into everything that we live with. Coming from all the lessons that we've studied. First of all, we studied about space, how divine, godly energy is in every space, in everything. There is a soul. Every experience has a soul of the experience. We also studied how in all of time, each moment has its godly energy that's creating this moment. The opportunities of this moment are how God designed this moment to be. And so both in space, in time, in everything is God's divine energy and attention. So ultimately, what does it come down to? The conclusion from all that is, in every moment of our experience, in every activity that we do, this is all set up for an engagement with this activity to somehow serve God in this particular way, in this activity that you're involved with right now. Now, how do we do that? How do we bring the divine into all of our mundane? That's what we're looking to explore today, and we'll have 3 areas that we'll address: the kitchen, the bedroom, and the boardroom. Where we eat and how we eat, sleeping and working. And it's amazing. Honestly, let me just exit this so we don't get any more notifications. It's an amazing class, and I'd like to give us an opportunity to jump in. There is a lot. I'll give you a heads up. There is a lot to cover, and in this particular class, they've had a meditation prepared for each one of the 3 acts, of the 3 parts of the lesson, for both eating, sleeping, and working. I don't know that we'll get through all 3. I'm hoping that we're going to get a chance to cover the first 2 with both meditations, and at least the 3rd section of work, and 1 meditation you'll finish off at home. Put up your hand if you've enjoyed hearing Rabbi Leibel Wolf and you'd enjoy spending part of the lesson with his insights. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Excellent. Thank you, Tzvi. Okay, so if you think that this is a new agey kind of thing, oh, find God in all of your activities and you know, be spiritual everywhere, sounds wonderful and new agey. Well, guess what? In the Talmud, it records a very profound statement made by a fellow named Bar Kapora. He quotes a verse, which I'll share with you. Based on that verse, he says, you can build the entirety of Torah and service of God based on this one verse. What is this verse? Take a look together. Page 148 in the student book. Know God everywhere. Take a look. Behold, Rachecha da'ehu. And I'll share the screen as well, so that we could enjoy a look together. Give me one moment. Share screen. There we go. And you could zoom in if you need. Okay, behold, could we have Felicia? Could you help us out with the text both in Hebrew and in English, if you're comfortable? Text 1a. Oh, I think you are muted. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Sorry. So the English is which text? The know God in all your ways and he will direct your paths?
Yes. Would you share with us the Hebrew as well?
No, it'll be too slow.
Okay. It's an honest answer. Thank you. B'chol derachecha da'ehu v'hu yeyasher orchotecha. In all your ways shall you know God, and he will direct your paths. What does that mean? Know God in all your ways. The stress on know God in all your ways. Now, there are the ways of God. How would you describe the ways of God? The areas that God has given us instruction, the areas that God has directly commanded us about engaging with those particular activities, like mitzvot, commandments, like lighting the Shabbat candles, like giving charity. All of those areas are directly, it's a mitzvah, it's God's directive. That's the ways of God. How would you describe your ways? I'm opening up to the crowd here.
Just the 3 things that you had mentioned earlier, the sleeping, eating, working, the daily activities.
Amazing. Good. So know God in all your ways means to know God within those activities. How is that done? When you're involved with a mitzvah, you're involved with something which is so clearly spiritual or godly or purposeful. So it's pretty easy to assume that you're on the track with the purpose of why you're doing this, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. But what about the things we just do? We just do them because everyone does them. It's just natural to be doing them. So how do we begin to make those things purposeful? And I'll give you a heads up. The answer is through consciously focusing and meditating within all of those activities. You're never going to get to be able to do it purposefully unless you pay attention, unless you're focused. So each and every one of these 3 steps, we're going to have to figure out where do we introduce the opportunity to focus? How do we introduce the opportunity to focus so that they become purposeful? Let's take a look at what Bar Kapara says in the Talmud, where he spells this out. Text 1b. Josh, could you give us a go? Text 1b.
Bar Kapara taught, which is a brief passage upon which all fundamental principles of Torah are dependent. Our Proverbs: know God in all your ways, and he will direct your paths.
Thank you. So it's a brief passage upon which all fundamental principles of Torah are dependent. How's that?
By the year 2040. And that's so important because as we
that is significant.
We're trying to address.
And so that's going to be the basis for our class this evening. So it's not a new agey thing. It's already set in stone as part of our Jewish tradition. This is very Jewish. You want to ask what's Jewish meditation? Not only meditating in prayer. Jewish meditation means focusing, being mindful within your eating, your sleeping, and your work. How's that? By the way, sleep meditation does not mean that it's supposed to put you to sleep. Just a heads up here. We're going to do a sleep meditation video. It's not for everybody to go to sleep. The Rambam in text 2 spells this out not only as a suggestion or as a kind of general context. He spelled this out as a halacha, as a halachic ruling in the laws that govern our character and our behavior. He spells out how one is supposed to behave. It's a long text, but it's great because it's all halacha, it's all the halachic ruling based on the Rambam. And so I'd like to ask for us to jump into text 2. And Stephen Shannon, could we have you read for us text number 2 from the English? Thank you.
We should direct our hearts and the totality of our behavior to one goal, becoming aware of God, blessed be He. The way we rest, rise, and converse should all be directed to this end. For example, when involved in business dealings or while working for a wage, we should not think solely of amassing wealth. Rather, we should engage in such activities for the sake of being in a position to obtain that which our body needs: food, drink, shelter, and a spouse. Then when we eat, drink, or engage in intimate relations, we should not intend to do these things solely for pleasure, to the point that we eat and drink only that which is sweet and tasty, and we engage in intimacy for pleasure. Rather, we should focus our minds while eating and drinking on the exclusive benefit of maintaining a fully healthy body. Therefore, we should not eat whatever the palate desires, which would put us on par with animals, but rather we should select foods that are beneficial for the body, whether they are bitter or sweet, and we should avoid substances that are harmful to the body, even if they taste delicious.
Okay, so there we go. If it's for pleasure, then it's not necessarily for purpose. If it's for purpose, then it's not necessarily for pleasure. That's, I would think you could summarize the whole paragraph as, are we talking about purpose or pleasure? What are you engaged in this activity for? Is there a purpose here? If yes, then you'll eat what will bring you towards your goal. What's your purpose in eating? To give you energy for the day. You eat a good breakfast. So you're not going to eat Cocoa Puffs or what are the other good, very non-filling sweet cereals that you could eat about 5 bowls of without really getting anywhere. It just doesn't add up to the purpose that you've designed for it. So I don't think that it's mutually exclusive. You could also enjoy eating the things which are lending themselves to the purpose that you'd like to appreciate from that eating. But ultimately, it's a question of why are you doing this, purpose or pleasure? And if you're going to be doing it for purpose, that could only be accomplished by way of focus, by way of actually engaging with the activity in a more purposeful fashion. Okay, so let's a quick tally of what's your favorite food, favorite dinner food. Can we get them in on the chat? Favorite dinner food, and we're talking on the kosher end. Good. We have everyone is thinking. Good. It's good to think. Which part of the brain did we wake up at this present time? The imagination, the memory. Bobby's favorite, something pizza. Thank you, Shannon. Josh, very good. Salmon for Felicia. Okay, got a good few fish eaters. And I wonder what Lev would say. Could we get Lev's input here? Colorful veggies, spaghetti and salad.
Lev would definitely say pizza.
Good, especially in New Haven. Okay, now let's take a second moment to think. If you were stuck on a desert island and you had exactly one food to bring with you to sustain you, what would you bring along? Type it in. We'll give you two foods.
Can you cook?
Manna. Cool, Tzvi, taking the man along with you to the island. Good going. Can you cook? Yes, you could cook, assuming you have fire. Potatoes. Rock and roll, yes. And not French fries, because you got no oil. Just potatoes. Fish, okay. Almonds, okay. There you go. So we've got a bit of a different tally coming here from what's your favorite dinner food to what is the necessary item that would give you life, that would give you the nutrients. What are the food items that have those nutrients that you really want and need for your living? Ultimately, what do we eat? We eat to live. We eat to be energized. So here, look at the two different tallies and think, well, I'll put it this way. We don't live on a desert island. We live in America. In America, you could get everything. So what are we going to be eating? We're going to be eating whatever we enjoy. We're not going to be eating almonds because we have everything available. So if you have everything available and you're going to be eating what you enjoy, how do you turn that process of eating into a purposeful activity? You've got to be paying attention somehow to the process of your eating. How do we do that? From the farm to the table. Okay, so the truth is that every single food that you eat, every single food item goes through a very intricate process until it arrives at your table in front of you. Even something simple like a fruit. It's natural, it's not even processed. Think how many steps there are on the way for it to get to you and to your table. I've just heard welcome Mimi. I've just heard a comment from a farmer in Israel who leaves go of his farm in the 7th year of Shemitah. And he comments about it's a vineyard actually that he's engaged with 6 out of 7 years. And in the 7th year, he lets it just go. And he was describing how every single year where he's engaged with the process of growing these grapes, every month of growth makes a difference. It's not like, oh, is this a good year or a bad year for the crops? Every month is a question of how will the weather affect and their environment affect the grapes' growth in this month. So think about how much energy has been placed into these grapes that ultimately get harvested by some fellow who's hired, by some machine that was created just for this particular activity. And then there's the packing and the delivering and the transporting. And the fellow in the supermarket who keeps on refilling the baskets. How many people are a part of this grape ultimately arriving at your table? So much goes into that process. Each step of the way, we said, is a step of the way in God's world. God's present, engaged with every step of that route. Then you think of processed foods. How much is involved with a processed item? I mean, there are hundreds of steps that go into every single food item that's processed. I think if you took a list of the ingredients on your breakfast plate and you tried to write out that list of ingredients with all of the steps that it took to bring them together, it would be impossible. Think of how much was invested in that food. All of that with intention so that it arrives on your plate. Now, how are you going to use that food? Are you just going to rush through it and move on to the next thing? Really? This is here for you at this moment because it's ready for you to use it and to enjoy it and to use that energy for a good purpose. But ultimately, even the act of eating in and of itself, you're engaging with this food here that's got so much that's been invested into it. I'll share with you a very cool custom. You may be familiar. When you make a blessing on food, not always are you holding the food item. But when we make the blessing on the chalot, the challah bread, on Shabbat, what are we doing when we make that bracha? What is the whoever's holding the chalot, what are they doing?
They touch them.
Excellent. You're holding the two chalot together. You've got your 10 fingers on the two chalot. Why? Fascinating text from Reb Yaakov ben Asher, who says that we have, text number 3, we have in the process of this food arriving at our table, God is involved in that process just by way of all the details. All of the steps that were possible only because of all of the investment and God's presence at each and every part of that stage. But similarly, there are so many mitzvot that happened with the bread for it to arrive at your table. So taking the example of bread, take a look at your student book, page 153. And let me put this at the top, actually. I'm going to ask, Ronnie, can you give us a go? Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, this is from the Tur, who is a halachic commentator.
Right. Before reciting the blessing over bread, put both your hands on the bread, for your 10 fingers reflect the 10 mitzvot associated with bread making. They are to avoid plowing with 2 species of animals together, to avoid growing forbidden mixtures of plant species, to leave lecha, shika, and pia, 3 distinct forms of overlooked harvests.
Charitable harvest.
For the poor to collect, to bring the first fruits, bikurim, to Jerusalem, to donate the teruma tithe to a kohen, to observe the rites of Maser Rijan and Maser Sheni tithes, and to donate a portion of dough, challah, to a kohen.
How many of those rang a bell? We're so unfamiliar because we don't really engage in harvesting and agriculture. But in Israel, so many of these mitzvot are very relevant. Yes, you're not meant to be plowing the ground with two species together, though nowadays we use machines. So we've kind of absolved ourselves of that hardship. But when it comes to charitable forms of harvest, giving the maaser, giving the portion to the Levi, to the Kohen, the Truma, that is done today with the produce of Israeli land. So this is incredible when you break it down to how many mitzvot are invested in this one item of food on your plate. When it arrives at your plate, it's ready for you. Now you play the next role. And it's a question of how meaningful could you make this activity? So let's think about the first opportunity to add meaning to the activity of eating. What would come to mind if you thought of how to bring in meaning? Bring in mindfulness.
I think the first step would be gratitude and awareness of what's in front of us.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And how do we express that gratitude?
Through a bracha in the Jewish tradition.
Amazing. Thank you. So in the Jewish tradition, it's already set in every activity of eating that you make a blessing before you eat. Where did that tradition begin? Who was the first to introduce making brachot on food?
Moshe?
Let's go a little bit further back.
Oh, yeah. Abraham?
Yes, you got it. Abraham. The Medrash says Abraham was in the desert. He had a tent set up, open on four sides. He welcomed guests. Do you know that Abraham spread the name and awareness of God? How? How did he make the world aware of monotheism, which is ultimately going all the way back to Abraham? He was the introducer after everyone kind of got a little bit sidetracked. He brought everyone back to the idea of monotheism. There's one God. How? Through food.
Yeah.
Hospitality. I mean, think about it. If 3,500 years ago Abraham was doing that, then we're not too far away from the Chabad tradition of food is where it's at. You want to bring people together, you bring them together with food. You want to bring more mitzvot, more awareness of God, more joy in the world. How? With food. Food is the key. Why? Because it's not just food. There is so much there. So the benefit of the bracha, what does it say about Abraham that he would get those guests to enjoy their meal? After they enjoy their meal, he would tell them, you must bless. And they would say thank you to him. And he would say, no, you can't thank me. Or you could thank me, but you must also thank God. And that was the first step, that gratitude, Steve, that you mentioned. But it's more than just a gratitude. When you ask a kid to make a blessing, what is the first thought that comes to mind for them? Which blessing do they need to make? Well, where does the food come from? What process needed to happen for this food to get to me? So you're already thinking of that process. When you have a food from the ground, you make a blessing that it grew from the ground. Food from a tree, you make a blessing from it specifically towards its type of source. And that's the idea of the blessing. So each one of these areas, what we're going to see is that the mindfulness that we have is going to benefit us in three ways. Practically, we're going to benefit from the mindfulness in the activity. We're going to benefit emotionally and also spiritually. What are the three benefits in eating with mindfulness? First of all, practically, what would you eat if you weren't mindful of your purpose at this moment? You would eat what you enjoy. And the Rambam points us to eating what is healthy for us. That's the practical benefit. Emotionally, if you weren't mindful of your meal, you would rush through your meal to get to the next thing. How satisfied are you when you rush through a meal? emotionally, you're not satisfied. Even physically, you're not satisfied from the meal if you rush it. And so emotionally, it's a richer experience when you stop and pay a little bit more attention. You know, in halachic rulings, you can't eat and continue walking while you eat because you have to make the after blessing. You have to make the after blessing where you started. So you have to come back to your place. Yes, Steve, go ahead. I see the hands up.
Yeah, I've always wondered this question, which is why is the pre-meal bracha so short, but then you get to the birkat and it's so long? So both of them are prayers or meditations or gratitudes or whatever.
Yeah.
But tell me about the length and why so long after, not before.
Good question. So the Torah describes the need to bless when we are satisfied. First of all, as a sense of gratitude. And that blessing that the Torah mandates was structured in many different stages. It got longer and longer and longer. That's why it's so long. Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, you have to bless God for being satisfied from your meal. He created the first blessing as the structure for that blessing. Then his student Joshua, when they entered the land of Israel, said, wait, now we've got two things to be thankful for. We've got to be thankful for the food, but also the land which produced this food. And then later on, when they were thinking about the special opportunity to serve God in the temple or the lack of, so we've got to pay attention to what's the most important thing that we want to have back, the temple and the rebuilding, and what else are we thankful for? Let's thank God for everything while we're at it. So it got longer and longer and longer. So the truth is that the blessing after the meals, it began much shorter and slowly added. The second difference is that the blessing that we say before we eat is rabbinically ordained. The blessing that we say after we eat is sourced directly from the text of the Torah. So the rabbis said to themselves, hey, what do we see? We see people rushing through their meal. That's no good, because what are the chances that they're going to stop and really thank God after rushing through a meal? What are the chances that they're going to feel satisfied at all after rushing through a meal? And for other reasons as well, they said, no, before you eat, you have to stop. They saw what people were up to and they said, we've got to change the trend here. Let's pay attention before we begin. And then you'll have a richer experience of your meal. I can't see eating Alison Shapiro's soups. Can you imagine, Alison, if people rush through your soups? It's good that soup is hot. You can never rush through it. Can you imagine rushing through soup? You've got a burnt tongue and you've got a whole lot of other problems. It's just not worth it. Imagine the satisfied feel of a warm bowl of soup filled with goodness. You can't compare. You just can't compare. So that's practically and emotionally. How about spiritually? What is the spiritual gain that we have when we pay attention with our eating? Is eating a spiritual activity?
We feel connected with others and to our source.
Okay, thank you.
There's actually, I think there's something in Shulchan Aruch that talks about the consumption of food. The way someone eats food, you know, what's on their mind in that moment, the food itself, in a spiritual sense, it takes on those qualities, and then that person absorbs that, and so that enforces it even more. I think that's a reasoning for, it's one of the reasonings for some of the halacha when it comes into eating during a fast, when it's necessary. Like if somebody is like, I think it was also, that reasoning was also brought about when a famous person from our history, she was eating while pregnant or something like that. I forgot exactly what
It affected the fetus inside, what a mom eats.
Yes.
We eat comes who we are, absolutely. So it's defining our existence. Excellent. Let's take a look at text number
This is Mimi.
4A.
Rabbi, this is Mimi.
Yes, go ahead, Mimi.
Does it say anywhere to enjoy your food and enjoy the company without talking? How many times we eat and we talk and we put the food in our mouth and we don't even realize what we're eating because we're so busy talking?
That's an interesting point. The truth is that, yes, we have many sources not to talk while eating, basically because it's dangerous as well. You don't want to choke. But it also says that you're supposed to share words of Torah at the table when you have a meal. So you shouldn't be talking while you eat, but in between, you should use the opportunity of gathering together to share good words, good news, and good vibes.
Okay,
But absolutely.
That's acceptable.
Absolutely, good point. Take a look at text 4a, why we eat. Fascinating idea. And we're gonna do the text first, and then we'll explore it a little bit following that. Alison, will you do some reading in text 4a? And it's page 154. Thank you. Alison?
Which was created through them. When we take a fruit or any food and recite a blessing over it with proper intent, articulating the words, "Blessed are you, God," mentioning God's sacred name, the spiritual energy responsible for bringing that fruit into existence is activated. This occurs because everything was created through the divine name, and our articulation of God's name in the blessing awakens the divine energy that flows from God's name within the fruit. Then the awakened energy within the fruit provides spiritual sustenance for our own soul. This can only work with kosher food, substances that God himself directed us to sublimate from mundane to divine. This is the deeper significance of the verse. Know that a person does not live by bread alone, but rather by whatever comes forth from the mouth of God does a person live. It is not the physical bread alone that supports life. Rather, when we utter God's name in a blessing and activate the spiritual energy, that is what gives life to a person, or more precisely, to the soul that animates us.
Wow.
That was good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When you say a blessing, you're saying God's name. The creation of the item sitting in front of you was created how? By way of different variations of God's name, that energy is channeled into the world and is invested in creating this food item. So this food item in front of you has a soul, but how do you awaken that soul? By making the blessing. You create a channel for the soul to be uplifted from that food item. And now that you've, so to speak, released the energy of that food, not only the physical calories, but the spiritual calories, what are you creating? Energy that's now available. And where does that energy go? Into you. And that energizes not only your body, but it energizes your soul. There's a lot going on in that one text from the Baal Shem Tov. And I'll tell you one more point.
Someone needs to mute.
I'll tell you one more point. The Baal Shem Tov says, why do we crave Why do we want to eat? Why do we sometimes feel a specific desire to eat? The Baal Shem Tov says there's communication that's going on here. This is text 4b, but it's a long text, so I'll paraphrase. The Baal Shem Tov says, within the item in front of you, there's a soul. That soul communicates. It calls out. It wants to live its purpose. Who hears the call of that soul within the food item? Your soul hears it. And therefore your soul wants to engage and assist the food item in its journey towards its purpose. Again, everything, this is based on all that we learned already. Everything has a soul. Everything is enlivened by God's energy at this moment. Everything has a purpose. Everything is on its way to its purpose currently in the right place at the right time. So you're just bringing it all together with your conscious decision when you choose to eat. This particular item and how you eat it makes all the difference.
Does that hold for ice cream and chocolate chip cookies?
When you crave them, you're saying. So we must know that we do have different energies within us, the good and the sometimes tricky energies that we have to be wise about our choices. So the tricky energies are there sometimes to help us make the right choice. But yes, when you're eating ice cream, don't forget that this ice cream is part of God's world, and ultimately it's becoming a part of you. So yes, make a blessing. And yes, be intentional when you engage with it. I'm not going to say don't eat ice cream. We live in America. We're going to eat whatever we want.
No, I was just thinking, it's very easy to think, oh, the soul of that ice cream reached out to me. It wasn't really for me that I'm eating that ice cream. I heard you.
Absolutely. Listen, you got to have a good policy across the board, though. So if you're listening to the ice cream, you've also got to listen to a lot of other good voices that are calling out to you to engage.
Right.
Can't be so selective.
Right back. There's a voice calling out to me, engage and take her outside.
Go ahead. So this is something which is very, very significant because it's so real and it's so relevant to our day-to-day activity. And the difference is night and day, whether we're paying attention or not. I had a fellow say last night to me that he was schooled. He used such an interesting expression because he eats all the time, but he rushes through his meals. And here he's understanding that the meal itself is meaningful. It's like Shabbat. When you eat a meal on Shabbat, you're not rushing anywhere. You don't have to get somewhere else. The meal is part of the Shabbat experience, part of the holiness of Shabbat. And that's essentially what we're trying to introduce here with our eating as well. And like Shabbat, the calories don't count, right? Everyone knows that. So yes, enjoy, but realize that this is all for the purpose ultimately that you're engaged in. I'll take any comments or questions, and then we'll go to the meditation. Everybody on the same page as the Baal Shem Tov here. This is great.
No, I mean, it just makes me, consider even like about our responsibility and who has access to eating foods that are truly nourishing and why. Like, I was thinking a few classes back how that holiness is even in the things that are harmful or hurtful or in deeds that are not good. And so the way people eat and the way our culture feeds ourselves is not always, it's not like people are making bad decisions. So it just, like emotion, people eating because they're sad, like we use food in such a way to try and fill and make connection and remember our Bobby and Zadie and remember where the soil is, like there's so much that is very like spiritual. So I'm just thinking a lot about who has access. Like there's a desire, I think, for all people to eat nourishing, healthy foods. And this food system that you've been like referring to about all the people that get food, you know, I whispered to Steve, I was like, there's no God in processed food. Like, it's not good for you, you know, like, I don't think there's God in like a Lunchable, you know, but who has access and why, and the system, you know, like we don't create systems that are caring for one another, you know, there's because of.
Okay, so
Just thinking of all that.
That's what the processing does, is it squeezes the God right out of us.
It disconnects us, right? From each other and from the source of food and from the farm workers who we're not really blessing them. They're not, you know, because of the hardship of their lives to bring us food and so on. So
right.
Thinking about that.
Right. So it's a colorful world. It's not just black and white, it's colorful. And in each experience, you have a range of how it's addressed and how it's produced, how it's available, and all of those areas in every step could use help, could use improvement, and could use mindfulness. If we were only mindful when we ate, then we would land up with a system that provides not such necessarily healthy food. You have to be mindful earlier on. Who are you providing the jobs for, and how are you providing them, and how is the owner providing for his workers? And all of the steps need to be done in a healthy and a happy way. Absolutely. I'm going to share the screen with you, where we'll do a meditation together. And Rabbi Leibel focuses on what we have in the raisin. So if you have the raisin handy, I did include that in the email, but I don't know if everyone noticed. I should have sent out a reminder. I was debating, and then I forgot. So if you have that handy, enjoy that. Otherwise, I think it's a meaningful meditation either way.
We don't dichotomize between the holy and the secular. In other words, everything has meaning. Everything is valuable. Everything is precious. Even the most mundane aspects of life contain deep spiritual meaning. And we relate to that in a very profound way. Even eating. You have been given a raisin, just hold it in your hand, and I'll tell you what to do with it. So gently close your eyes and just become aware of your 5 senses. Become aware of what your eyes see at the back of your eyelids. Become aware of what you can hear in the room, even sounds within you. Become aware of the feel of the raisin, its texture. Anticipate the taste of the raisin once you begin to eat it. And become aware of any fragrance around you. I would like you to take the raisin and adopt a particular kavanah, focused intention. And the focused intention is that you are going to borrow the soul energy of that raisin and allow it to become part of your own energy system. You'll do that by eating it. To adopt a focused kavanah, we prepare ourselves by saying a bracha. A bracha, commonly translated as blessing, means a way of drawing down a channel for the soul spark within the raisin to become elevated through. Say it with me or just respond, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam borei pri ha'etz. And begin chewing. And as you chew the raisin slowly, many times, become aware of the different textures that you encounter. And as the saliva mixes with the skin of the raisin, with the body of the raisin, it changes even more. Become aware of the sweetness of its taste. All these aspects that are the product of the spark soul of that raisin. Sweetness produces uplift of emotions. That is the soul spark within. Listen to your teeth chewing the raisin, thereby making it much more amenable to digestion. All the wondrous ways that Hashem created the world, all just for elevating the soul spark in the seemingly mundane and ordinary. Be prepared now to swallow the remains of the raisin. And as you do, sense how it becomes one within you. Its vitamins and goodness being extracted through the bloodstream into the needs of the body, and the soul spark within being released to a much higher spiritual state because of your bracha. Everything we do in life can be elevated and become much more meaningful if we understand the spiritual dynamics. Soul sparks exist in everything. When we do the right thing, we free the soul spark from its prison, channeling it to its higher source. And we become elevated in the process.
That was very beautiful.
Rabbi, you're muted.
Thank you. Tzvi, I'm going to ask if you can mute because it's a little bit noisy in the background by you.
Oh, yeah.
So that's for eating. The benefit of practical application of eating healthy, the benefit of emotional, the benefit of your meal where you just have a richer, more satisfying experience. And like you said, Shannon, you're actually benefiting so many when you're mindful of what you're eating and where it's coming from and how it gets to you. And the third is the spiritual dimension of it. You are playing a role with the purpose of this item that has arrived at your table. And it's arrived at your table because it's meant to be there. It's meant to be a part of your journey. And you're a part of its journey. You're calling and communicating here. This is fantastic. So, like we learned last week, don't rush, because the activity of eating is meaningful. Let's move on to the next. Sleep. If that didn't blow your mind, then this one will. Why do we sleep? I mean, we could have asked the same for why we eat. God could have created us without needing to eat. And yet, no, he created us in such a way that our energy needs to be replenished, and we need to farm for foods and calories that we ingest, and that way it gets replenished, but only for a short time until we replenish it again. Let's ask now about sleep. Why do we sleep? Why did God design? I mean, he could have designed us in any sort of way. But let's say you have a car, you want to put a battery in this car. If you could put a battery that would not need to be recharged, wouldn't that be wonderful? Think about how much money you would make if you could create a battery that just went on forever. You would put Tesla way out of business. You'd be way ahead of everybody else. So I'm going to ask you the question in a different way. What if God could give you a pill that would not necessitate your sleep anymore? You would have all the energy you needed without needing to go to sleep. Would you take that pill? No, says Shannon. No. Okay, wow, we're getting some no's. Let me ask you a different question. Would you be ahead of everybody else if you had a pill that you didn't need to go to sleep and everybody else did have to go to sleep? Would you be ahead of them? What? I didn't hear. Ronnie?
No, I mean, there's a mechanism that needs to shut off and be replenished, and you can't keep, I mean, the way humans are constructed in the form we are in, we would not function properly.
Okay. I'm saying in a theoretical sense, if you could be given this pill, would you be ahead of everybody else who didn't get that pill?
Yeah, if you could keep going.
So on the one hand, when I asked you the first question, you were happy to say that you'd prefer to have sleep. But on the other hand, you're saying you'd be ahead of everybody else if they needed sleep and you didn't. What if I told you that if you didn't need sleep, you would arrive or you would be at work, and for you it would have been one long day. Everybody else would show up to work. Yesterday was yesterday. Today is a new day. Today there's new opportunity. Today, they're excited about getting to work today, or they're excited about the opportunity. They have a new, fresh energy today, because yesterday is bygones and today's a new day. So who's ahead of the game? Why? You had an extra 8 hours? Thank you very much for the 8 hours. This guy's got a fresh energy. He's got a fresh mind. His approach to his day is completely different. How important is sleep? It is so important for the cycle of pause, stop, slow down, and the renewal of a new day tomorrow. And we'll look at 3 benefits that we could have from being mindful about our sleep: a practical benefit, an emotional benefit, and a spiritual benefit. So why do we sleep? Because we benefit big time from sleep. And the truth is, if you weren't mindful about it, you would not benefit in nearly the same measure as when you are mindful about it. So what's fascinating about sleep? The first idea that we just mentioned is reflected in the text that we're about to look at together. I'm just going to exit here so we could look at the text inside. Let's take a look at text. Text 7, morning blessing. What's the first blessing of the morning?
Modeh.
The first prayer of the morning might be Modeh, the first expression of gratitude. But what's the first blessing? First blessing.
Washing the hands.
Asher Yatzar. Thank you, Josh. What is Asher Yatzar? In intoning, God forming us. And with all of the different features that he's created us with. Why do we say that blessing anew this morning? So, Josh, could you go ahead and read for us? Text 7.
Nahagu ha'olam levarech b'chol shacharit. It is customary to recite the blessing of Asher Yatzar each morning, because at the start of each day, we are like freshly created beings. It is therefore appropriate to praise God daily for having created humans with his wisdom. Asher Yatzar et Adam b'chokhmah.
Excellent, thank you. So what ultimately does sleep provide us with? It provides us with a fresh start to a new day. But how do we get that fresh start? If you just jumped and crashed into bed at night, you would not be refreshed in the same way in the morning. It's the question of how we go to sleep is going to help and determine how we wake up. So Jewish meditation is not ask your friend or neighbor about their sleep meditation. What's the purpose of any sleep meditation you'll find on Spotify? What does it want to do?
Put you to sleep.
Exactly. What's the purpose of the Jewishly inspired sleep meditation?
To rectify things so that you sleep with peace.
Excellent. Wow. You're one step ahead. But what's the purpose of it? Ultimately, so that you should wake up
refreshed
with the proper context and purpose for the following day. So Jewish meditation for sleep is not to be able to sleep, but rather to be able to recharge correctly for the following day. So where does the next day begin? It begins before you go to sleep. What do we do before we go to sleep? I was giving a class in Flatbush with an Israeli fellow who, him and his wife both had grown up in non-religious homes, but throughout their life's experiences in many different places, they had come into contact with the Torah and the mitzvot, and they brought that into their lives and their home. So they had an observant home, but one memo that he didn't get because he didn't grow up in a religious school, he was never taught about the evening prayer of Shema before retiring for sleep. So when you ask somebody about Jewish prayer, what would they tell you? How many Jewish prayers do we have every day? Come on.
I don't say 100 blessings. I don't know.
100, right?
Yeah.
But you have three classic prayers of Shacharit, Mincha, and Ma'ariv or Arvit. Morning, afternoon, and evening, the evening prayer. But there's one prayer that we don't talk about as much. That's the prayer before going to bed. And there is a structure, a serious structure to that prayer. What is that prayer about? So first of all, take a look at the the Zohar, who shares with us what we're supposed to take note of before we go to sleep. Text number 8. And Shmuel, can we have your input here for text 8? Thank you. Shmuel, do we have you on board?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
All right. So, sorry, you were reading from the book?
Yes, page 163.
The morning or the top or the bottom? Which part?
The bottom.
Okay. Before lying down to sleep each night, we should take stock of our deeds throughout that day. We should repent for whatever we did wrong and ask God for compassionate forgiveness.
Thank you. Thank you. So every single evening, we have the opportunity to take stock of the day and slowly but surely process and close out the day, because the day is over. Now, practically, what does that mean? It means that you're allowing yourself to let go and go to sleep for an upcoming new day tomorrow. What makes that so special? What's the emotional benefit of that? Part of it is letting go of the toxicity, any issues, any arguments you may have had today. The day is now over, and you could say, you know what? That was a part of today, and tomorrow will be a brand new day. And so if I'm ready to let go and move into a new day tomorrow, I don't want to be schlepping with me all of the anxiety of today. Why would I schlep that with me to tomorrow? Tomorrow's a new day. Can you imagine how many things do we have to kvetch about every day? Every day you have something to kvetch about, right? Even if you have the same thing you had to kvetch about yesterday, you'll have to kvetch about today. But it's a new day. That means you're not kvetching about yesterday's problem, you're kvetching about today's problem. It takes a whole new kind of fellow to kvetch about yesterday's problems. Hello, it's a new day. What are you taking along yesterday's problems into today? You know the joke about the nudnik, the shlemazel, and the shlemiel? The shlemazel poured soup on the shlemiel, and the nudnik asked what kind of soup it was. So there's got to be a name for the guy who is kvetching about yesterday's problems. Come on, seriously, you have enough things to kvetch about today. Get with the program. But ultimately, what does it tell us? It tells us we were able to let go. We don't have to carry everything with us into the new day. You know what the first part of the prayer of the evening Shema before going to bed, you know what the first part of that prayer is? Hareini mochel, I hereby forgive, l'chol mi, to all who have bothered and shepherded or insulted or hurt me this day. I hereby forgive them. And I ask you, God, to not harm them on my behalf or because of what they did to me. That's what we say in the evening prayer every night. How incredibly beneficial is that? You let go in order then to give over your soul to be recharged, which is the next benefit of the spiritual recharge. And in the morning, you've got a refreshed and ready to roll soul full with a good energy and purpose. And that's the next text number 9. Mimi, we haven't heard yet from you, and Svi as well. So Mimi, if you're available, would you read for us text 9, student page 164?
I think from everything you said tonight, some of it, To me, this is the most meaningful, because when you're sick with an illness and you don't know from day to day what's going to happen, and you go to sleep with pain and you have tears in your eyes and you say, our sages instituted the practice of reciting the verse, I deposit my spirit into your hand. Each night before going to sleep, just after reciting the bedtime Shema, we should meditate on the idea that we are depositing our souls as if on loan, and consider to whom we are providing the deposit. Our souls then draw life from on high, that is spiritual life. That is so awesome.
Thank you, Mimi. So when they were constructing the prayer for nighttime, they took different portions of Torah verses. And this is one verse that they plucked out and they placed into the Shema prayer. The Biyadcha Afkid Ruchi. In the Hebrew, it just rings so powerful. In your hands, Afkid, I place, I deposit Ruchi, my spirit. And it's like a car wash, the spiritual car wash. You know what happens? Literally every day you park your car and in the morning it's been shined, the gas has been topped up, the tire pressure has been leveled and balanced, shiny, fresh, and new rolls out of the garage in the morning into your body, ready to roll. How incredible is that? I mean, we all know we come home from the day, you need to charge your phone. There's no way your phone is going to just continue. So the soul is going for a spiritual recharge when we go to sleep. That's what happens. And who are we depositing it with? With God. He, so to speak, when he gives us our soul, he gives it to us for the day. And we're given the soul with that purpose. Ultimately, we have to think about the end of the day. Did we focus on the purpose that we were invested in? And tomorrow's a new day and I could refocus, realign myself and go with that fresh new energy. How much are we missing when we don't pay attention? Going through this process before going to bed is magical. Now, somebody said last night, well, then, of course, after finishing the prayer for the bedtime Shema, I wouldn't take out my phone. Because then I'm just introducing all the junk of today back into my head before I go to sleep. Why would I do that? And it's so true. And traditionally, after we say the final blessing for the bedtime Shema, we don't even talk before nodding off to sleep. Meaning the final blessing of that prayer is said immediately prior to actually going to sleep, like when you're finished doing everything else that you need to do. This bedtime Shema, if you don't do it yet, this is going to create magic for everyone, for you, for everything. Everybody, you're going to come to work and people are going to be like, 1 second, what happened? What coffee did you drink this morning? And you're going to tell them, nah, it's not this morning, it was last night. Most people, when you talk about last night, it was whatever they were drinking last night that affected them today. This is not your coffee that you drank last night. It's the process, going through that process. And think about it, who's in charge here? You're in charge. You have the koyach, you have that potential to make the difference. If you're paying attention to the clock, you know that we're running out of time. So we're going to be wrapping up with the final meditation for sleep, and God willing, we'll take a vote here how, but God willing, we'll have an opportunity to either look ourselves through the rest of the lesson, which is about work, and you'll get off easy because work is what we do for the most part of our day, and work is what we do where we invest with people around us, and it's tricky. We will tell them that after Shema, no more talking, lol. Thank you, Shannon. So this is the best. You know the lady that was sitting at the supermarket, and an African American lady, and she turns to her child and says to the kid who just took the best chocolate off of the stand next to him while he was waiting with his mom at the cashier. And she says, no, sorry, that's not kosher. And he casually puts it back on the shelf. And so the Jewish mom behind her says, 1 second, what did you just do? How'd you manage that? She says, well, I noticed the other time I was in the store that a Jewish mom was here with her kid. He took the best candy he could find off the shelf, and she told him it's not kosher. And he just put it back. So ever since then, I've incorporated it. What reminded me of that? Oh, so there you go. Anybody, tell the Jews, the non-Jews, everyone, make the final blessing before you go to sleep, and then no more talking. It's the trick. Okay, so that's eating and sleeping. Two powerful examples of things that are just so mundane, and yet they could be filled with meaning. The story goes that the fifth Chabad Rebbe was sharing with his family at the Shabbat table how everything one does on the Sabbath needs to be holy because it's a day of holiness. And his daughter, little kid, says, 1 second, what about sleeping? How do we infuse holiness into sleeping? And in his response, I'll have to find the exact quote. In his response, he said, even when you sleep, the sleep needs to be holy. And if you go to sleep with the intention that it's holy, it becomes holy. So the intentionality that we invest into that activity actually transforms it. Okay, so that's the first two acts. The act of work we'll have to get to another time, or you'll look at some of the texts on your own. I'd like to also point you to, before we do the meditation on sleep, I'd like to point you to, in the student book, page 171, you might be familiar with a fellow named Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl, through unfortunate circumstances, came to an incredibly profound approach to life and how we all need to live and how we all live naturally and are motivated. You know what he says? What motivates us ultimately?
Meaning.
Meaning. That's what motivates every activity. That's what motivates us to stay here, to stay alive. Thank you, man. Search for meaning. Oh my gosh. Josh, you're on. Yeah.
I just read it. That's why it's fresh on my desk.
There you go. You're on the right page, literally. So he's translated that into a critical need. Part of our DNA is to search for meaning. It's actually the way God instructs us when we work. Part of the instruction of our work is just like we have to rest on Shabbat, we have to take 6 days a week and work. Oh, Tzvi, it's on reserve in my college library as course material. Wonderful, yeah. Let us know how you enjoy it. That's just a classic example of something which is available for everyone. He's come to this conclusion, not by way of these Torah verses, but by way of a critical DNA that we have. So ultimately, we know that this is important for us. The question is, how much attention and time do we give it? How much opportunity do we give to benefit from these things? Remember, practically we benefit, emotionally we benefit, and spiritually we benefit. So the key points of the lesson before we go into the meditation for sleep. Page 173, key points. Tzvi, will you share with us the reading of page 173?
I would, but I do not have the book. Is there a link I could click on?
I'm going to share it with you as we're here. You're right. I'm to blame for the...
No, that's fine. That's fine.
173. Here we go. And let's...
Okay.
For you.
The key points?
Yes.
Right. Key points. Jewish meditation is action-oriented, designed to deliver practical results in both physical and spiritual well-being. That's the first point. Second, know God in all you do is a major axiom of the Jewish value system. It speaks to the notion that everything we do, not only the overtly spiritual and religious, can be an expression of godliness. 3, eating can be transformed into a mindful spiritual act. On a simple level, this can be achieved by being conscious of the complex journey from our food's origins to our tables. Making a blessing prior to eating brings that mindfulness into focus. 4, on a deeper level, all food possesses divine energy. Being conscious of that and eating only for positive purposes allows us to release that divine energy from the food and transform a mundane act into a divine experience. This too is brought into focus while reciting the blessing prior to eating. 5, sleep. Thank you, Rabbi. Sleep is an opportunity to reboot and refresh. We can imbue it with profound significance if we take stock of the expiring day, resolve to perform better tomorrow, and use our nocturnal rejuvenation to break free of past toxicity. 8, work is not simply a means to an end. Humans choose to work even when they do not require the money. Rather, work satisfies a basic human need to earn our own success. With proper meditation, we can find God in the mundanity of our daily work routines.
Excellent. I love the energy. Thank you, Tzvi. So that's a comprehensive class. I hope that it's provided some food for thought and that you get a chance to go look back at the text that we did not cover fully because we did skip some, but they're worthwhile. And I'd advise to, not advise, you can do whatever you like. They're there, enjoy them. And here we go for the final meditation. And just a reminder, next week is the final 6th lesson of the course. This has been so special, but just like today's was awesome, next week is also pretty awesome. It gets better and better, and looking forward to seeing everybody this coming week. And with better news, God willing, here and around the world.
Amen.
Just going to do elevating the mundane. Here we go.
Such a mystery, falling asleep, that absolutely beautiful transition as you move from consciousness into some state of subconsciousness. And what you're doing is allowing yourself to move upwards, wander your soul in higher realms where it is energized for the next morning. Gently close your eyes. And just become aware of waves rolling in from the sea. Observe one wave as it finally lands on the shoreline, losing its form, its last gasp, with its wetness extending, and then the excess gently rolling back into the sea. The cycle of a wave, the cycle of life. Are you aware of the moment of falling asleep, when the wave loses its form and spreads on the shoreline? Do you prepare yourself for the journey of your soul at night, when the soul rises to higher realms, enjoying a tutorial to further enlighten it, give it peace and rest, to become refreshed by morning time? Do you have complete trust in your sleep state? Do you willingly allow your soul to travel on high? That state of trust, bitachon, is so necessary for a good night's sleep. Biyodoi afkid ruchi. I deposit my soul in God's hands. The soul has been given to me by the manufacturer with a warranty, and that warranty includes nightly gain, improvement, refreshment. And that's why I sleep. Prepare yourself before you go to sleep to have a state of confidence that the journey will allow you to be a better you next morning. Say the Shema before you go to sleep to create that sense of absolute confidence as you deposit your soul on high. By doing so, the depth of your sleep allows the soul's return to be one that brings you strength and confidence the next morning. Prepare for a good sleep. Be confident in elevating your soul and allow the next day to be a day of further growth and the soul's pathway through the body to reach out and make the world a much better place.
Powerful stuff. Very, very powerful stuff. And I want to say a specific thank you to Mimi for what you shared earlier, and wishing you, Mimi, a refuah shalema, a very speedy recovery, a full recovery, and God willing, we should be able to share good news here on this call in the future. And we do have an upcoming course. So Mimi, God willing, in the next course, you'll be sharing good news as soon as it happens. God willing, it should happen very, very soon in the best way.
Thank you. Yes.
And thank you everybody for being here with us tonight. It's so, so special to study together. Thank you, Felicia, Allison. Good to see you. Shannon, Steve. Regards to Lev and Shmuel. Thank you for joining. Tzvi, Josh.
Thank you, Rabbi. This was lovely.
Yasher koach. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Susan. Good to see you.
Good night.
Gods. And good night, Ronnie.
Good night to everybody.
Good night. Good night.